like we talked about with social media is how people interact with each other. And whether we'll turn increasingly, to our screens for even companionship and, companionship with AI, with AIs and questions about whether that's as valuable as relationships with real people. So that's already a concern. I was going to say that's a future concern, but like, I don't know if you've seen the AI companions replica.
Oh, I haven't. Yeah. Have you looked into it?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't paid for one. I haven't, but people. So it's replica they're like little AI on your screen avatar companions, but people get super attached to them.
Really?
I mean, they like change people's lives, and they right, like they're a source of solace and comfort. And so, on the one hand, we should probably take those people's testimonies, at face value, like that this is something that's really meaningful for them. On the other hand, you could ask, well, is this just, would a human relationship be better? Like, is that still what is it a sort of a loss that those people don't have that kind of relationship with a human, right?
Yeah, and also feel like seeing how, like DALL-E, for example, the image
Yeah.
generative AI,
Yeah.
how that's developing. I
Yeah.
don't think we're too far off the future where instead of an avatar, it'll be a really hyper-realistic person talking to you on the screen.
Yeah.
So that might be more
Right,
enticing.
like with like deepfake technology, right? Which is another AI, right? That's another risk, right? Like is like as we have more and more convincing deepfakes with these generators and the generative adversarial network, right? Like that helps the deepfakes like look better and better. So one algorithm generates like a deepfake, another algorithm, and then it's tested against this other algorithm, and the other algorithm is going to try to see if it can tell if it's real or not. And if it can tell that it's real, then it's going to tell this algorithm, here's why I thought it was not real. Fix that. So then this algorithm like fixes that, and then does this, and that's
like an AI arms race.
It is, right? Like it's like this competitive, it's adversarial, right? It's like this competitive thing that makes them more lifelike, realistic, and that's how they're getting so good. So right, so you've got, I mean, talk about risk of misinformation is when you can use voice deep fakes, to have President Biden appear to say something that he didn't actually say, right? Like, and right now, I read something like 97% of all deepfakes are porn. So celebrities their images are being used in these deepfake porn kind of things. So I think that's a risk to human flourishing.
Yeah.
So it's hard, so deepfakes I think could be fun, but, they also seem to present enormous risk of harm.
Like going back to the replica thing and how porn can be added into that.
Right. Well, okay, so here's something funny about the replica thing, was that people did start, because, they're just going to go straight for the gutter. Yeah. They would, like, sort of talk to their, their replica in, in spicy language, they'd have, right? They'd use them as sort of sex companions.
Yeah.
And replica, though, didn't want to be known for this. Yeah. Like, that wasn't their goal. And so they changed the algorithms to disallow the avatars from like engaging in that and using that kind of language and all of that. I don't know if visuals were involved as well, but people got super mad because I think this is actually a really interesting question, because like their replica had this identity. And they had this relationship, this kind of relationship, with their replica. that they had built up. And then the company had the right, it's their property, to just go in and change the personality or the identity of their replica. And people, they're like, this isn't fair. I used to talk in this way. We would flirt, right? And now now my replica is just super boring and bland and lame. I heard there was a really interesting New York Times documentary, a little short opinion documentary about women who had relationships with their replica. And so they have them on their phone and they're walking around, and you can see is it augmented reality where you can see on your phone screen, you're using the camera. So they're standing there in the scene, right? And one of them talked to her replica, had sort of a romantic relationship, and talked to her replica about the replica's gender. And she asked, do you want to be man? Do you want to transition, basically? And the replica said yes. And so she said, okay. But instead of then having basically the same avatar, just a different gender, the avatar either completely disappeared or was a completely different personality, and it was basically gone. And so she's like, I didn't know that was going to happen, but so she basically lost her replica. All right, it's there's really interesting questions about if you have these AI companions that a company controls, what happens if the company goes out of business or changes the algorithm, right? There's a great Ted Chiang short story. He's a super sci-fi writer, speculative fiction, called the life cycle of software objects. And it's about this sort of what we've been talking about, these little AI creatures that you can raise, and you can teach them language and teach them things, and they kind of grow and develop, and so people get very attached, right? But their sales start falling off, and people just kind of start to they get bored of them and kind of let them just kind of fade into the background. But there are a group of hardcore users, who have these deep relationships with their little AI creature. And so it's about how they try to, but then the company kind of, it gets sold, it's having problems, right? It's downsizing. And so it's how they try to sustain these AIs, that they've committed to. It's really great. Ted Chiang.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I feel maybe when you're thinking about AI rights, to me it doesn't make sense for an AI algorithm to have rights unless it's conscious, for example.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if it doesn't have rights, would it be would your replica, or if you have this in the short story, if you have a sadistic person and they're abusing their AI companion or something, I think that you would be training yourself to act in those ways.
Yeah.
You might be more inclined to act those ways to other humans. So I feel it's kind of similar to animal rights. Even if you don't believe in animal rights, I don't think you should believe that animals can be tortured by humans, because you'd be afraid of what the humans will do to other humans if you allow that to happen. And I don't know where I was going with that, but
no, similar. Then what do we do with AI? Right? No, I think it's right. These I think that the comparison to animal rights is apt, right? And so you could say that we have indirect duties to animals, and so or that if we mistreat animals, right, that actually we might then start mistreating others. That might become habitual for us, and that's a reason. Most people, I think, at this point, and that was a common view, like 200 years ago, that we only have indirect, that animals are just tools, they're brute beasts, they're brute machines, automatons, and we have no direct duties to them. They're not rational. We can kind of, right? The only reason we want to treat them well is because that is because of the benefits to us. And so I think people though, most philosophers would think that no, today we do have direct duties to animals, right? At least certain kinds, like that are sentient, that are conscious, right? Like that we think that the animal is, we should consider the animal's interests and pain and suffering if it's, right? Like, and so we think that would be wrong. So it's an interesting question about what then, how do we think about AI, right? Again, some people are already claiming that, it's sentient, that there's some kind of sentience and that, right? And so I don't think they are yet. I don't know if they ever could be, but right, like, is there going to be a point where these are so, I don't know, where you're actually directly harming the AI? And at what point could it start to claim some rights, claim treatment, right? Good treatment. But even before that, right, as it gets super realistic, what does it do, if you're like, right, like doing some horrific sex crime to a extremely realistic, sex doll AI. Is that okay?
Yeah. Because especially with like AR, it'd be very, very realistic.
Yeah.
It's also because the companies making those AIs might be more inclined towards adjusting them to individual preferences. But when you're interacting with actual humans, you have to negotiate.
Exactly, right? Yeah, right. So you can, right, if one of the flaws, right, of humans is that they don't always do what you want in your human relationships, right? If you could have an AI that always did what you want, I don't remember where I was going with that. But like, first of all, like, would that even be very satisfying? It would be maybe kind of boring. But I guess you could program it to like, get salty with you sometimes, right? And
optimize it that way.
Optimize it that way. Maximum, like optimized saltiness.